You're listening to the Break Podcast powered by Career Cloud.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Break Podcast. I'm your host as always, Michael Garden. My guest today is Dakota Robertson, or Wrongs to Right on Twitter. Dakota has an incredible story of transformation and resilience to share. If you remember Dakota's name, it's probably because of a previous guest, Taylin Simmonds, who he credits with single-handedly changing his life. So now it's time to get the master's story. Dakota hails from Kelowna, Canada, a place that seems to have an uncanny knack for nurturing remarkable creators and innovators, as you'll soon discover. Dakota grew up with drug-addicted parents and lost his mother to the addiction at a pivotal age. Despite his childhood, or maybe because of it, Dakota knew he was destined for greatness, but hadn't a clue where it would come from. Does that sound familiar? One of Dakota's break moments came on September 24th, 2020. A date that he's not only marked in his journal, but has also proudly displayed on his Twitter banner for all to see. It was a pivotal moment in his life when he made a life-altering decision, which we get into. In just 3 short months, Dakota transitioned from a college student with a part-time job at Domino's Pizza to someone fully immersed in the world of entrepreneurship. He made a bold choice to leave college, quit his job, and start fresh, creating on Twitter. This decision was fueled by a burning desire for something more, a fear of living an average life, and the realization that life was too short for regrets. Dakota's journey is a testament to the power of resilience, self-belief, and the incredible transformations one can achieve when they are driven by purpose and deep desire for change. In our conversation today, we'll explore his upbringing, the challenges he faced, and the pivotal moments that led him to where he is today. We'll delve into the power of belief and how small wins can set the stage for significant life transformation. We'll also discuss the importance of self-awareness and the role that community and mentorship played in Dakota's journey. You can keep up with Dakota on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, or by catching his newsletter called Capital Creators on Beehive, and all of these links provided in the show notes. So without further ado, let's jump into this incredible conversation with my new friend with an old soul, Dakota Robertson.
This episode is sponsored by ZipRecruiter. If you need a change and are looking for a new job, or if you're looking to hire for your small business, please check out ZipRecruiter today. Their smart technology matches the right candidates to the right jobs and sends new opportunities right to your inbox. They make finding a job or hiring the right person easier than ever. ZipRecruiter, the smarter way to hire. Try ZipRecruiter for free today by going to ZipRecruiter.com and tell them I sent you. Dakota, welcome to the break. Thanks for spending some of your Friday with me today. How are you?
Oh, thank you for having me. Now I'm Peachy Keen, Jelly Bean. How you doing?
Excellent. Yeah, no, I'm great. I was, getting ready for this to talk to you because I've talked to people who tangentially know you, and I am just blown away by the amount of creators in the Twitterverse and in the LinkedIn world and Instagram that are in Canada, particularly in Kelowna, where you're at. Is there something in the water up there? Like, what is going on?
Dude, I don't know. I've thought about that as well. We got big YouTubers like Jeff Nippert and, Instagram models, all that stuff. I'm not sure, man. I think it's something about the weather. It attracts a certain type of people. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's weird.
It really is just unbelievable. Like, I've had Dan go on, and he's recently moved there.
Yeah.
Taylin, Clint Murphy's over in Vancouver, and I think he maybe has a place that's close to Kelowna. It's like, I got to get up there at some point. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's weird. It's starting to become a big hub too. Like you said, Dan Go moved over here. So I was born here. So, I would like to establish that. I was here first.
You're the OG.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thanks so much again for spending some time with us. I'm really have been looking forward to this conversation because, as I was explaining to you, I'm so obsessed with moments in our lives that change our trajectories, and looking back and connecting those dots and hearing those stories. I kind of want to start there and have you kind of describe the beginning of your journey, which really kind of begins on September 24th, 2020. Can you talk to our audience a little bit about that date and what kind of transpired after that?
Yeah, 100%. So leading up to that point, I was probably around the age of 22. I'm not going to do the math, but I was probably around 22, 23. And the years prior to that, I was very frustrated or like kind of in a pain point where I knew I wanted to do something work-wise where it gave me freedom, time, location, money, freedom. But I didn't know what to pursue. So I tried Amazon FBA, I tried blogging, I tried websites, I tried X, Y, and Z. And I didn't stick with any of them because they just weren't interesting to me. So I'd do them for 2-3 weeks and then I would just quit. And at that point in time, September 2020, I was going to college for my second year. I was going to be a high school teacher because I didn't know what else I was going to do. I was like, college was my backup plan until I figured it out. I was like, I'm just going to go to college and try to figure something out. But if it doesn't work out, I'll be a teacher. And I was also in crypto at the time. So yeah, I was scrolling Twitter in September 2020 and I came across the infamous money Twitter. It's a little section of the internet on Twitter and it's a bunch of entrepreneurs, fitness people, people in the like, health and wealth space. And they're just giving their takes, opinions, lessons, and they're turning into content and writing about it. So I stumbled across that. And I also stumbled across a course where it was showing, like, grow your Twitter following, do X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's interesting. I never thought about creating content. And the course was $40, a little ebook. I was like, screw it. Like, what do I got to lose? And the reason why that day, I remember that date because I wrote about it in my journal, something along the lines of, just bought this course, don't know where it's going to lead, but we'll find out. I actually got it as my banner on Twitter right now. But I gave it a go and basically just started creating content. It was absolutely awful. Had no idea what I was doing. For 3 months, just putting out content, no idea, just seeing what happened. And eventually found my footing and I got indoctrinated more and more into the money Twitter scene with all the people, telling me to get an entrepreneurship, go all in, changing mindset, different limiting beliefs and all that. Right. And I was learning more on Twitter than I was in college. And that's where I was kind of looking at my life, where I was, I'm single, I don't have kids or, much responsibilities. And the risk to reward ratio right now will never be higher. So I was looking, okay, I could go all in on this. If I screw up or fail, then whatever. Or I could keep going down this path of going to college. And, I'm not sure if I'm going to find it fulfilling and all that and, go the traditional route. And, if I keep going down that path, I might just have regret that I never tried anything and just live a life of regret. And I didn't want that. It scares the shit out of me. So I just said, screw it. I made the choice after 3 months growing. I had no idea how, but I was like, I'm going to find a way to make it work on Twitter. I'm going to find a way to monetize and go all in. So I made a decision not to renew for the next semester. I dropped out. I quit my job at Domino's. I was working minimum wage delivery job at Domino's. And I restarted my account from zero. I just fresh slate. I'm just going to go hard and all in and make this work. And if I just put all my focus, energy into it, eventually started growing my account a lot faster. I started learning different skills with copywriting, marketing, sales, and packaged that all together to offer a social media ghostwriting service. And eventually landed some clients, scaled that up, and built it that way. But it all started coming from the pain point of, I can't keep doing what I'm doing. I got to make a change.
This is why I'm totally obsessed with like these moments, because I saw that you put that as your Twitter banner, and that was pretty recently, right? Like within the last couple of days, I feel like.
No, it's been really like a month or something.
It has been okay. I feel like I saw it beforehand, and then so a month or so. Yeah. But you had that date has such a particular emotional appeal to you that looking back, it's seminal enough for you to kind of put there for people to see. And I just think that's so amazing that that's the date. This idea of that pain point and, how sometimes you have to,
it's just like you have to hit that particular pain point sometimes in order to change your life. What, you were young and you were in college and you got a lot of options. What was so painful there? I know there was some frustration. You felt like you had a lot of talents and abilities, but you weren't able to kind of figure out how to actualize them in the world. Like, what was it about that moment that really put you over the edge?
Yeah, so it was kind of a long time coming. My mother planted the seed in my brain when I was young. I remember she sat me down one day and she told me, Dakota, this is when I was like 8 or 7 or something. She's like, Dakota, don't work for somebody else. Start your own business. That's the key. I didn't appreciate her words at the time, but looking back on it, I was like, oh, she really kind of like brainwashed me into that. I'm forever grateful to her. But when I was 18, I became an electrician, and I was working in the oil and gas industry in Alberta, and it was super cold at like -40, negative whatever. So really, really cold, working in the freezing cold, doing work I just did not enjoy. We're surrounded by miserable people. I'm the youngest one on the job site, so I'm getting all the flack, all that. I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, dude, is this all there is to life? Is this what I got to look forward to? And I'm just looking around everybody, like, everyone's miserable. And I mean, even before that, I watched both my parents just throw their life away to crack addiction. And I saw, like, God damn, life is so fickle. And you legit, like, if you actually think about it, you legit only get one life. And it sounds cliche, but if you actually just sit down and visualize like potential death, if it's just blackness or whatever you want to believe, like, you might as well just milk this for everything it's got. Like, do everything you want. Like, screw living an average life. Like, really, like, go out, do some risks, even if it's uncomfortable. But yeah, I just knew what was waiting for me if I didn't make a change. You work a miserable job, you live an average life, and it just scared the shit out of me. Just thinking about it. I think Tim Ferriss has something called fear setting. Like, was like visualizing the worst possible scenarios, and we're more prone to move away from pain than move toward pleasure. So I did that, and it was very powerful for me just seeing like miserable people, especially in the later stages of life, and that scared the shit out of me. So that really prompted me, and just I think also how my mother was very encouraging when I was young, and telling me if I set my mind to stuff, I can do it, and really believing in me more than I believed in myself a lot of the time. So that was probably my subconscious, like, you can do this, just if you're just at it and you're just consistent, you can figure it out. But yeah, it was a lot of that kind of stuff.
Yeah. I think a lot of people that I talk with that don't have some of the experiences you had at a young age, and I do want to ask a couple questions about that. They don't understand or become viscerally aware of that pain of regret until later in life, right? Because everything's kind of hunky-dory for a while, right? And then all of a sudden, it usually happens around some big event, right? 40, obviously having like a midlife crisis type of a deal is one thing. Death in the family, or something like that. COVID happened, right? Where people start to really reevaluate, and it just reminds me of this quote from Confucius. It's like, every man has 2 lives, and the second one begins when he realizes he only has one. That type of mentality where it's like, we're just coasting and on autopilot until we hit that moment where we start to say, like you have, I mean, you really only have one shot here. Like, why wouldn't you try to maximize every moment that you have doing things that bring you joy, or getting you towards like a more fulfilling life? It's pretty amazing. And I often wonder how we get ourselves to that point earlier. Mm-hmm. So you're a 25, 26-year-old guy, but you have a lot of experiences that got you there. And I don't know how we accelerate that for people like me, but can you talk a little bit about what your upbringing was like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I have an older brother, and he's 3 years older, but he was born with cystic fibrosis. So at the time, my mom wasn't really fit to take care of him, so he went with my grandparents. But when my mom had me, she was like, "Oh, there's no way I'm giving him up," or whatever. So I lived with my mom, and my mom gave my father an ultimatum: "Look, you either keep smoking crack or you get your shit together." And he's very addicted, and I don't blame him. But he was scared to raise a kid or kids because he never had a father. So we parted ways and all that, and I was a mama's boy. That's where I got my love and affection and attention. So naturally, like, I gravitated toward that. And was very shy, took on a lot of feminine traits, even though my mom was more of like a masculine woman, like badass, but still, I was very timid and very shy. I would cry if I was away from my mom too much. And just growing up, she was my world, and she meant a lot to me. And I was her world because I was also her love and affection. And eventually she found her boyfriend, and never got married, but they were very serious. And so we had like a family of 3, and he was a drug dealer. He took me on a lot of drug deals while she was working because he had to take care of me. So I would sit in the car for hours on hours at these drug deals while he's in the house doing whatever. And I would just sit in the car, just think a lot, just stare out a window. I didn't have an iPhone or any of that stuff. So I did a lot of thinking as a kid. That's maybe influenced me in a lot of ways, just a lot of introspection. But just growing up, a lot of stuff like that. And eventually I kind of got fat. I ate whatever was in the house, double stuffed Oreos, played video games, all of that, put on some weight. Kids like to point it out when you're fat. So, I got teased a bit. People made fun of me. And I didn't like that. When you're a kid, you don't really have that strong sense of self. So you look towards your peers for that sometimes. And I did that. And I adopted the identity of fat loser with low self-worth. And the narratives that people are telling me, I started playing in my head all the time. Yeah. And, when you play those narratives all the time, it starts affecting you. You start acting out. You adopt that identity. So I just didn't like myself for many years. I just did not like who I was. And again, that plays into that pain point. I remember the switch was when I was in class one day, I think around grade 6, and the teacher was talking in class, and one of the kids in the back, they were talking, whatever, whispering, but the teacher paused for whatever reason, and all you could hear was like he was whispering something to the person next to him. It was like, "Dakota, that fat kid." Like, that's all you could hear. And everyone heard it in the class, even the teacher and everyone. And I just remember feeling so humiliated. Like, everyone was looking at me, and my face went red, and I just wanted to cry. And I just felt so much embarrassment and shame. And shortly after, that's when I was like, F this. I'm going to, like, screw. I'm just in such this big pain point. Like, what am I going to do? Like, keep doing what I'm doing? Or I could just get off my ass and use that anger, that emotion, that embarrassment, use that as fuel. So I started going to the YMCA boot camps with my mom's boyfriend. Every like weekday morning, we'd go, wake up at 5, go to these boot camps, get yelled at by this 6'4" jack dude named Jeff, and I would work out until I was throwing up. Oftentimes, I'd run to the bathroom, throw up, but I loved it because I was moving away from who I was and toward who I wanted to become. And that was a pivotal moment for me, just seeing the first results of that after months, put in all this hard work, and you see, I put in consistent effort, hard work in the right direction. I do this over enough time and I see results and I feel good about myself. And that's when you get hooked. And then you start thinking, okay, how can I apply this to other areas of my life?
Right.
Fitness is just a parallel of, it's a philosophy pretty much, and it parallels all these other areas of life, like relationships or business or whatever. So I'm very thankful for that. But I faced a lot of different transformations in my life. I felt stupid. I felt, fat, very insecure and socially anxious. And it was just like really feeling those pain points and just thinking, I think you get a win in one area and then you look, okay, I can transfer this into other areas, and I've made this progress here. Let's do it for here. And you start getting those wins and you start building your confidence, and it really compounds. I find it really does. But
I call that cycle like the belief flywheel.
Yeah.
You build belief in one area, and then you're able to transcend that over. You see the parallels, and you're able to take it into other areas of your life. And very often it starts with fitness. I mean, again, talking to Dan Go and his program and the people that he's talked to, like I saw so many parallels between, and I was in that program for a while as well, between people who lost 20 pounds, 50 pounds and changed their life in that way, then going on to completely reinvent who they were as either in their business or going on to be entrepreneurs or do something completely different. It's one of those sort of keystone transformational things. So you're sixth grade, and I'm curious, I hear you describe your situation. Really didn't have a father, drug addicted parents, the boyfriend issue going on drug deals. And I'm thinking like the odds of someone coming out of that the way that you have, which again, you seem very well adjusted and calm. And I mean, I'm sure that took a long time to sort of work through, but at sixth grade, thinking, oh, I could be a victim or I could do something about it. Where did that come from? Did you have any assistance from the boyfriend before you said, hey, I want to go to these classes? Or like, how did that work? I'm interested in that moment.
Yeah, I believe I remember correctly. I think it might have been the boyfriend's idea. When I heard it, I'm like, yeah, we're doing that. Like, let's do it. Like, go all in. But yeah, I think about this often. What determines self-awareness? What determines whether you become the victim or you see it as an opportunity? It really fascinates me. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure what influenced that or why I was more prone to going that direction. But I'm grateful for it. I think if I had to guess, maybe I think jujitsu. I trained jujitsu growing up as a kid, and I think that played a big role in my discipline, consistency, and being humbled, and I don't know, all different areas. But yeah, I'm not sure. What's the biggest thing you notice with like people that make a change in their life?
So I think the people that are most stuck are people that have never, ever ventured out and tried to do anything differently, right? Like they're so ingrained. And so I definitely think it's a muscle, right? And so one of my biggest lessons that I try to tell people is like, just, you have to try to start to do different or weird things that make you uncomfortable. And so start by really lowering the stakes on that. Because, I think we all build it up in our minds, like everybody's watching and, all of this kind of stuff. And that just prevents us from taking the tiniest action. But I also think and I don't know what sort of the nature versus nurture, what you can learn versus how you're wired. But I definitely think that I think about kids a lot. I've got 3 kids, 3 boys, kids that play organized team sports are often more resilient than not, because they understand that they just sort of understand this calculus that not everything goes my way. And that there are like the odds of me doing everything correctly and perfectly and getting the win every time is really low. Plus it's not that fun if that actually happens. There's fun in the game of you might lose. There's fun in that risk element. And so I think that is one determinant, or somebody that really gets focused on like a martial art, I think is another one of those things, right? Like you're building confidence in your defense capabilities and the way that you move and your strength. So I definitely think getting kids in those types of things earlier helps, but I haven't really read a lot of the literature on it. I'm sure somebody's studying this big time, and we should probably dig into that stuff.
Yeah, no, that's kind of my hunch too, because I was playing a lot of sports growing up, and I didn't like a lot of them, but I did it. I'm glad I did, because I think it built a lot of character. So yeah, underrated.
Yeah. So I want to ask a question about this. So we kind of talked about the moment you had been doing some other things. You had been
trying to figure it out. You've been testing the waters with what you may want to do to earn a living. I think we said eBay and flipping things and a few other different things. How do you go from dabbling in the shiny object syndrome and all of that to saying, fuck it, I'm going all in and I'm betting on myself for this one thing, which is Twitter? How does that work? Or how did it work for you?
I think it was the community. I think that was a huge part, because when you try these different avenues, you're doing it on your own. You don't know what's going on. You don't even know if it's possible. The big difference with Twitter and that community was I was seeing, there's kids in their 20s, even younger, making 10K plus a month, doing X, Y, and Z. And there's regular people like, they're like me. I'm like, oh, wow, okay, this is doable. Like, people are doing it. And then also with social media, I mean, it could be a hammer you hit yourself over the head with, or it could be a tool where you build foundations with. So what I followed people like Dan Go, people like that. And I would see them in my feed every day, and it basically conditioned my thinking. I think it reinforced different ideas like, hey, you can do this. You can build a business. It's totally possible. Do X, Y, and Z. And it was just conditioning my mind. It was, feeding it the, nutrition of whatever, the belief. And just knowing, hey, there's other people building stuff too. It's just encouraging to see. So that was huge. But also, I enjoyed creating content. That was something I didn't experience much with those other things, because I'm definitely more of a creative person. But also, when you create content, you get immediate feedback. You get the dopamine from the likes or retweets or whatever. So it may be superficial, but you're still hacking your dopamine, and dopamine is what motivates you to take certain actions. So you're getting that. It's easy to get those dopamine hits on Twitter because it's so instant, and I believe that reinforced my habit. So when I did it more, I got more reinforcement, got better, eventually got more reinforcement, and just that flywheel. So I believe that played a part in it, if I was to have a hunch. But yeah.
You're listening to the Break Podcast, powered by Career Cloud.
This episode is sponsored by ZipRecruiter. If you need a change and are looking for a new job, or if you're looking to hire for your small business, please check out ZipRecruiter today. Their smart technology matches the right candidates to the right jobs and sends new opportunities right to your inbox. They make finding a job or hiring the right person easier than ever. ZipRecruiter, the smarter way to hire. Try ZipRecruiter for free today by going to ZipRecruiter.com and tell them I sent you.
Take a lot of inspiration from 3 disciplines. One is investing. I'm a former trader and I learned the investment world early on. 2 is the world of human-centered design. In a previous life, I did a bunch of innovation work with a big design firm called IDEO and learned kind of this whole process of, coming up with a solution from nothing. And then 3 is entrepreneurship and the idea of building businesses. And I think those 3 disciplines, more than any other, are so good at what I call wayfinding. It's this idea of like, I don't know the right answer, but I need to test the waters in a whole bunch of ways and like systematically figure out where the signal is and what I should be betting bigger on and what I should not be. And I think, this idea of circle of competence with Warren Buffett, if you've ever heard of that, right? It's incomplete in that he's talking a lot about how you build your knowledge and skills and what you know. And I think that you can create an advantage for yourself in a lot of other ways, such as just leaning into your heart and feeling what your interests are. I think so many people in their 40s are thinking about their options from the standpoint of, can I make money at this? And they're trying to think logically, and they're not thinking about how do I create advantage for myself here so that I can keep doing it and figure out how to make money from it. And so I think that like what I'm trying to do and bring to people is more of a systematic approach in terms of mapping all the different ways that they could create advantage for themselves in their 40s, right? With the constraints that they have of, let's say, house and family and all of that, and then create a set of options that they can go after. So I feel like in your story, you did that without thinking about it really. Like you were like, okay, I'm going to try these 4 things. I'm not really interested in them. So boom, I'm going to shut them down. And this Twitter thing, I'm really interested in this. This is grabbing my attention. I am putting more effort into it without even trying. That's my path. And you sort of wayfind your path. Does that make sense to you?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I agree. 100%. It's kind of like you're in a dark room and you're like blind. You're just like feeling around and like, oh, here's something here. But yeah. Do you have a process for that? Like how you go about doing that?
Yeah. So I actually did this when I was in a corporate job. I had been an entrepreneur. I'd done a couple different companies. I was having kids. I was like, what should I do in between? I had a corporate job, basically at a large insurance company while I was kind of raising kids. And I got I knew I wasn't going to be a good employee because I'd never been a corporate employee guy, but I got so frustrated with the bureaucracy. And, there's a few things said to me where I was just like, this can't happen. But how do I engineer my life? How do I engineer a way out of here? And what do I want my life to look like? And so I went through like a really big design process, and I basically have I used this system, which I call now advantage mapping. And I'm teaching it to like clients, but it's this idea that you go explore these 8 areas of advantage that I think you can create in your life. So there's energy, interests, there's obviously expertise and aptitudes and, personality and things like that. You go create this map of those areas. And then you have this real creative process of like connecting dots between things, and you create sort of your power alley or what I call your advantage stack. You stack these different capabilities. So for you, like obviously you learned hard skills, but you also had an advantage that really comes from kind of the pain of your past, in that you had this aversion to regret and this ability to say like, I'm going to figure this out. And that's something that holds a lot of other people back, right? So we go through this and we really try to pull all that stuff out, especially stuff that's hidden. And then we do more of a design exploration process around trying to create what I call your options portfolio. So you look at, let's say, no more than 3 different areas where you could really have a high odds path of using your advantages and leveraging them and exploiting those advantages in 1, 2, or 3 lines of work. And you go through an explorative process around, okay, well, how do I get in there? What's the foot in the door? I have this runway that I need to meet, like all of these different things, but it's sort of this diverge around all of the ways that you've never thought about yourself before, then converge around some areas that are really sort of what I call high odds, and then diverge again in terms of how we go about doing that. So it's like, I don't say it's not like a rigid process, but it's more guardrails around putting some semblance of like order around this thing that feels so chaotic. Like, what am I going to do with my life? It's so chaotic. So I try to put a little guardrails around it.
Yeah, I love that the diverge converge. That's a great way of putting it. Yeah, kind of go explore, like hunt and then gather. It's great.
Yeah, I think you're just always in this process where I think like creatively, and I think creativity is such the skill for the future with people. Like you can be creative just by thinking about a problem differently. It doesn't mean that you have to go create art or create a book or anything like that. It's just like creative problem solving. And I think it's a constant process of expanding your options and narrowing your options, expanding your options, narrowing your options. And most people, I think, have a very narrow view of their options. And again, I'm talking about like you're at a corporate job, you're 40, and now you're like, fuck this, I hate this. I don't know what I could do with my life. And so you have to expand, you have to kind of diverge a little bit there. And then once they get the point that, oh, wow, there's a bunch of stuff out there that I could do, then they get shiny object syndrome. And they're like, well, what if I do this or that or this?
I go from being a lawyer to go be a yoga teacher. And it's like, well, that's not exactly high odds. So like, how do we narrow that set? And so I just think it's always this going out and coming back in, flexibility, like mental flexibility that we have to have in order to make changes and reinvent ourselves later in life.
Yeah, man. It helps. I think it helps, when you have the guidelines, but it's not super rigid, right? Because everyone's different. So I think it's brilliant.
Exactly. Yeah. It can't be like prescriptive. These are the 10 steps you must take, right? Like you're exploring your own unique path. So here's just some things you need to stay away from. And so this brings up the conversation around limiters for people breaking work or breaking their self-concepts. Like we obviously, there's a lot of fear of failure, fear of starting. But what are other limiters that you've seen in terms of like maybe people that you've worked with or peers that maybe haven't been able to make the jump and really create what they want to create in the world? How do you see limiters?
I think they speak words over themselves that limit them. So what I mean by that is they adopt a certain identity. They see themselves as fixed. So for example, I used to be very anxious, like in social situations. And I just always thought, I'm just social anxiety. I have social anxiety. I'm socially anxious. That's just how I am. And it wasn't until I read the book, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem, he said something in it where it was along the lines of, your thoughts are not your feelings and thoughts are not who you are. They're just that. They're just feelings and thoughts. And that made me realize, okay, I have this feeling of social anxiety come up, this anxious feeling. And I'm translating it as, I'm socially anxious. And because I am saying I'm adopting the identity of someone that is socially anxious, then my behavior is going to follow that because, your behaviors are just a subset of your identity. So I was playing that narrative over my head, just as a kid, and it followed me even when I was 16, 18, and all those years of conditioning. Even though I changed myself, like transformed myself physically, like I was pretty muscular, I just still had that fat kid inside of me telling me, you're not good enough. You're socially anxious, XYZ. I felt like I was going to be found out at any moment. Found out. And it wasn't until I started questioning the belief, the thought that I was socially anxious. It wasn't until I started questioning it that I was able to separate myself from it. It's like, socially anxious. No, I'm feeling a feeling right now that can be translated to social anxiety. That does not mean I am socially anxious. And then I would flip the script on it. It's like, okay, well, what are times in the past that I was confident, And then I would think, I did X, Y, or Z. So okay, would a socially anxious person do that? No. And it would wouldn't eliminate it completely, but it was, it reframes like, it's just a feeling, and then just flipping the script. And then I slowly built my confidence, and I would do more uncomfortable things and build those wins and stack those experiences. It's not some affirmation, look in the mirror. It's like, I have $1 million and all that stuff. You're actually looking directly at experience you have in the past and you're stacking those wins. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but you're counteracting the narrative. And over time, you're going to adopt the identity of that person because you're just going to keep stacking those wins. So that was very powerful for me. I forget what the original question was. I just went on a rant there.
No, and I have some follow-ups on that because I think the question was really about, limiters and where they come from and what they are. Right. And I feel like your explanation was pretty, I think you told me before we started here that, you feel 42 in some ways, which is my age. And I called you an old soul. I think what you just said is a pretty enlightened thing. And I'm wondering what type of guidance or support, was there anybody, a mentor or somebody that helped you see that as a path to kind of questioning those thoughts and feelings?
Not directly. So, I owe everything to my mentors, like my jiu-jitsu coach, my football coach, teachers. And I think they conditioned me, but not directly in that way. But what I found was I had indirect mentors, whereas like books like Jordan Peterson,
Right.
Whoever, Naval Ravikant. And I would consume content and books and podcasts from those people. And it was just basically just conditioning myself over time, kind of like the food you eat. It's not right. You eat broccoli and you're toned up, but it was just over time, I kept consuming that for my diet, my mental diet. And it conditioned me to think in that certain way. But yeah, it was, I would say very indirect mentors. And then also myself, I think people don't sit down and think just to themselves. And what I did at the age of 18, because I was in such a pain point, when I was working up in the oil and gas industry by myself, 12, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I was just miserable. I didn't have anyone to talk to. And I started journaling. And that was one of the best things I ever did in my life was journaling. I remember the first entries, like, I don't know what to even do, what I'm going to, like, what is this going to turn into? And I just started writing my thoughts, and that kind of got me thinking about, okay, I'm going to write about my day. What do I think about X, blah, blah, blah. And it just eventually just transformed. Okay, I'm feeling like this today. And, what do I want for my life? And it was just really reflecting. And I think journaling, actually writing, not just sitting and thinking, I think that journaling is the key, because you're forced to think on a thought, just at length. If you're thinking in your head, you bounce idea to idea. When you got pen to paper, there's something special about that, where you have to keep the sentence going. You can't just, restart, scribble it off and all that. You got to keep thinking out the thought, and you can transfer to different thoughts and all that, but you're forcing yourself to really go at length with it. And I think that provides a lot of clarity as well. When you can look back, how was I feeling a month ago? And, how did that turn out? What were my thoughts? Oh, yeah, it turned out that way. It's completely different direction than I thought. What else am I thinking that might be misdirected? It's just that reflection. I think people don't do that enough. And it's so good for your emotions, where you want to go in life, understanding yourself better. And it's very powerful. I would encourage everyone to, pick up the habit.
So when you started doing that, it was just totally free form?
Yep.
How have you evolved? Do you have have you found anything to work better process wise? I assume you're still pen to paper when it comes to this type of journaling, but is there anything that you found to work well?
I basically just sit down and, like some people have prompts. I just kind of free flow, like what's on my mind. And if I can't think of anything, I just start writing about what happened, like documenting, and naturally thoughts will come up. Mm-hmm. I really like that. But what I started incorporating, I tried a bunch of different stuff. I tried affirmations, X, Y, and Z. But what I found really useful was at the end of each session, write down 5 things I'm grateful for.
Yeah.
Or what I would do actually, depending on how many lines were left on the page, I didn't want to leave a blank page. So however many lines there were, I would just have to come up with whatever I'm grateful for that day. And what I found that really conditioned me to appreciate the present moment. And it conditioned me to see it in the present moment as well. So like going out throughout my day, since I was, always thinking, what am I grateful for? I would just kind of look like, time kind of slows down when you do that. Like, I'm grateful for that. And you just have a new appreciation. I felt really a lot happier. So those are the 2 things I did, just like free form, document when I can't think, or what are my thoughts on whatever. And then whatever I'm grateful for. Those are very useful.
So I'm trying to instill some of these habits with my kids I have 3 boys. I guess it's like 12, 9, and 7, basically, are their ages. And they're so distracted with devices and YouTube, and they love Dude Perfect and all this kind of stuff, which is, Dude Perfect's fine for me. But anyway, I have them, they get so distracted. I'm trying to teach them, to focus, right? And so I have them do every morning. They have to do the 5-minute journal. I actually have the exact 5-minute journals. It's what are you grateful for? What would make today great? And then what was a highlight of the day kind of thing? What did you learn from today? So they have to do that. They have to do quiet breathing for 5 minutes, and they have to do what's called 10-10-10, 10 push-ups, 10 sit-ups, 10 squats before they can do anything in the morning. Just because I want them to just like take that minute to pause a beat and be reflective. And yeah, they try to cut corners. They write like one thing on a piece of paper, and say, oh yeah, here's my journal for the day. But it's just the reps of like doing those things. And I just think that is such a critical skill right now in this just absolute age of utter distraction, to be able to sit there. So I'm on board with that. And I've definitely, like, journaling has helped me in a lot of spots, and I'm trying to incorporate it even more just on a daily basis. But there is some power when you are feeling something that is incongruent or at odds to just start writing that out. It's very powerful.
Crazy, man. I mean, because we all got these loops going on in our head. Like, oh, what about this X, Y, or Z? Oh, I got to do this tomorrow, blah, blah, blah. When you write it down, your brain recognizes, oh, it's somewhere, I can kind of let go of this information.
Right.
And also, like, one thing I did as well was I wrote down my ideal life. I didn't do it every day. Like, it was every, like, maybe once a year or something. I'm actually going to go through it today and see, because I remember just writing out what I wanted for life, and I legit made it come true. I'm not a big woo-woo person, but I think setting that intention, like, where are you going? Because a lot of people in business or personal life, they don't know where they're going, so they're just aimlessly wandering. But when you have an intention, actually where you want to go, and you write it down, even like sign a contract, I think that would be great. Like, I'm going to do this. Like, put out that intention. It's so powerful. And you're going to start recognizing, okay, if I want to go here, then I'm going to have to do X, Y, or Z. Or if an opportunity comes, like, oh, that's going to help me get to my ideal situation. Let's take that opportunity. That's very powerful.
Yeah, you need a North Star. You need some type of direction. You need to have an idea of what success is for you, like a definition of it. So that's one of the things that we do when I coach people as well, is like, it's sounds like everybody tries to do this, but what is success for you? Because I can remember sitting in that corporate job and being like, this is not my path. What do I want it to be? Right. And I think that's a big question for a lot of people. So what I suggest is they start with the opposite, invert that problem. Like, what do you absolutely not want? That you for sure, like, you don't want these things in your life. Start there, because then at least you've got those down. It narrows your ideas, and it starts to get you thinking about what you do want. And so my stuff was like, well, how do I build a business where I can work from home, not travel? I don't want to raise VC money again. I had all these constraints. My wife works, and so it's like, and she has she's a doctor, so she's got an important job. And I'm like, how do we make that first? So I'm the one that can pick up the kids and do a bunch of other things. Like, how do I build that? Like, what is that? And then how do I go build it? And yeah, I've done that. And that's the thing I'm most proud of in my entire life, is like, I thought about it. I took the long road and I built what that North Star was. And now it's just a process of continuing to evolve and continuing to change what I do or break limiters that I have today, and, to grow and to give my people that work for me opportunities and all that kind of stuff. So having that North Star is such a big deal. And to review it, not let it just sit, and collect dust in a journal somewhere. You got to be able to review that on a daily basis and connect back to it.
Yeah. That's it. It's powerful to have that accountability. It's easy. Oh, I just want X, Y, or Z. But when you actually state it and you get very specific, what timeline, what is, specific measure of success or all of that, it's powerful.
So there's the limiters we've kind of talked about, from getting yourself to do something big and maybe go on a completely different track. But then there's also limiters along that path, right? There's limiters because there's always obstacles and difficulty. And that's a little bit different kind of
limiter. And so you've talked a lot about like imposter syndrome and how you've had imposter syndrome at every single stage that you've gone through. Can you talk to us a little bit about what some of those examples were? Because it's definitely not the case that you just go from zero to hero and you're all of a sudden super confident in everything that you do. You have to be able to continue on this path because you love it and develop the grit to get through the obstacles. So I'm curious as to if you could give us a few examples on that and how you kind of overcame that imposter syndrome.
Yeah, the big one that comes to mind is when I restarted my Twitter account of February 2021, after I decided to quit my job and go all in. I rebranded as a writing account, and I was learning as I was going. I was just, adamantly reading books, consuming a bunch of content, applying what I'm learning, and then teaching what I was learning. And I felt like an imposter for like 9 months. First 9 months of being branded as a writing account. Like, who am I to give advice? I'm not an expert. There's people way better than me, all of that. And over time, I just built my confidence. And I stacked those wins, and I was able to look back like, okay, I've done X, Y, or Z. But I learned a lesson from that going forward in other endeavors. I reframe it now. Whenever I feel imposter syndrome, I see it as a good thing, because your brain wants to protect you from dangers, perceived threats. And so it's telling you, oh, don't do that. We haven't done that before. Like, watch out, whatever it says. And it's thinking, well, how do you even grow as a person? And it comes from, placing more stress than you're accustomed to, right. Just like building muscle. Right. And I just was thinking like, okay, well, if you want to get to the next level, you got to do that uncomfortable stuff. You got to do that stress. And you're just processing that stress as a bad thing. You're just, what a blah, 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 like getting all flustered. And it's like, okay, what if it's a good thing? What if you reframe it as a sign that you're becoming more than you currently are? You're growing. And I started doing that, recognizing, okay, yeah, this is uncomfortable, but this is the price I pay for who I want to become. And this is the necessary part I got to go through. And when you reframe it as, a sign that you're growing, and then you actually expect it to happen, you're like, okay, I'm on the right path. And it might feel uncomfortable, but you recognize that it's not in vain. Just like, you're working out and you're really pushing. It's like, holy shit, this really it hurts, but you do it anyways, because it's like, okay, I'm going to build back stronger, and it's going to be good. So when I actually launched a new offer, my Done With You coaching offer, showing people how to become ghostwriters, I had that come up again. I actually felt this time I'm so happy I did. The night before I launched that offer to my audience, because I never sold anything to my audience, but I held a phone. I was sitting in this hostel in Colombia, and I was just recording my thoughts for like 7 minutes. Like I'm just like, what happens if I fail, and what does that say about me? And I don't know how this is going to go, and are people even going to be interested? And I just remember kind of coaching my way through it. He's like, but you know what? I'm going to do it anyways, and we'll see what happens. Like, what if it goes right? Instead of asking, what if it goes wrong? What if it goes right? And what if it goes amazing? And I'm so happy I recorded that. And yeah, I launched that offer the next day, and it absolutely killed. I got kick-ass results for everybody, and it absolutely changed my life. And I think just recognizing in those moments that you're most vulnerable, most scared, those are the moments, those are the turning points. I look back at all the turning points in my life. It all led up to this big moment. You're like, okay, like I either go and do it, or I just back down and may feel comfortable, but I know I'm going to feel regret later. I'm always happy I did. Always happy I took the leap, because it always changed my life. And I think you recognize that after a while, and you see those signs, and you just kind of condition yourself.
You're listening to the Break Podcast, powered by Career Cloud.
This episode is sponsored by ZipRecruiter. If you need a change and are looking for a new job, or if you're looking to hire for your small business, please check out ZipRecruiter today. Their smart technology matches the right candidates to the right jobs and sends new opportunities right to your inbox. They make finding a job or hiring the right person easier than ever. ZipRecruiter, the smarter way to hire. Try ZipRecruiter for free today by going to ziprecruiter.com and tell them I sent you. It's the idea that we continuously feel this fear, but the moment you say, I'm going to go anyway, is the breakthrough. It's the break moment, because you're now somebody different. You're somebody who's feeling it, but still going. And I think that's really important. Everybody feels it. The biggest creators, the biggest entrepreneurs, they feel all the same shit we feel. They just say they're able to reframe it or whatever, or they just say, we're going anyway, because I don't want to regret it. My fear of regret, is bigger. I think about it. The imposter syndrome gets me when I think about trying to create more, and sort of quote unquote, like punch above my weight class, right? Like when getting bigger guests on, having mentor conversations, trying to figure out like how I'm going to break through, like in comments or whatever. Like I get imposter syndrome, that way. And I think it's a great reminder, like, okay, you're on the right track. This is good, right? Like the obstacle is the way, kind of a deal. So it's a good reminder for me as well. I want to get into a couple of like tactical tips and advice kind of thing, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah, 100%.
So as I kind of said, like a lot of our audience is dealing with what to do next mid-career. There's tons of people that are out there going, go start an online business, be a creator, do that kind of thing. I'm really agnostic. I want people to get a better alignment. And so I'm looking for you to give us some advice for the people that are, going to LinkedIn or Twitter, that are just trying to get better at maybe attracting new opportunities, scratching a creative itch, or trying to become an expert for their job, more or less, in a certain area, instead of just like going, I'm going to quit my job and be a writer, kind of a thing. Do you have any just top of mind, like personal branding kind of 101 do's and don'ts for that type of person?
Yeah, I think the main thing people have to consider is like, what are you going to base your account around? And the big thing, is kind of like the model you're sharing, but I like to tell people, okay, what do you have interest in? And what do other people have interest in? So you have your skills, and you don't have to be great at them, but you look at what are your skills? And is there market demand for it? So I might be very skilled at Peruvian throat singing, but there's probably not a big demand for that on LinkedIn. So if you're going to create content, then it's just not going to pan out. And then, just finding that intersection where they both meet, and then, go into that and start creating start consuming content from the people that are, maybe the experts or the leaders in that area. Consume content from them, and then apply that knowledge and teach what you're learning, and think about it from, who are the people a few steps behind me, and just think about you're like teaching them. And I find that really, one, helps with imposter syndrome, and two, helps you understand what you're talking about on a deeper level, and three, you actually attract people to follow you, because you're creating content that is helpful. You're solving people's pain points, or you're helping them reach a desired outcome, because you're creating actual content. And then on top of that, so I call that the authority kind of level of content. And on top of that, share personal content. So that's, your stories, your experience, your worldviews, stuff like that. And that's going to build that connection with your audience. And when people connect with you, you could say whatever. Like I tweeted potato yesterday, just that's it. And I got like 100 and something likes. That's because people know me, and they like me. They connect with me. They're like, oh, it's Dakota being a potato again. And they like it. So the shift moves away from what you say to who you are. And personal content's key for that. So I find like put a big focus on authority content, like one piece of actual advice every day, but also mix in that personal content where you're sharing your story and all of that. And then I call it the GAP framework. So there's GAP, so authority, personal content, but the G is growth content. And this is great for early on because nobody knows you or trusts you or whatever that stuff. You want to get your name out there. So I find, if I'm a writer, I leverage other well-known trends or figures. So if I'm a writer, maybe I'll talk about Pixar's storytelling frameworks. And people know Pixar, so they consume the content, but then they're like, oh, who created that? And they check out my stuff. And it's like, oh, okay. Or when ChatGPT was trending, okay, how can I relate that back to my niche and talk about that? So writing with ChatGPT or whatever. If I was in fitness, you could relate ChatGPT, how to use ChatGPT to construct a nutrition plan or fitness plan or whatever. And then you're going to get a lot more attention that way. So called the GAP framework: growth, authority, personal. And you incorporate all three, it has a synergistic effect that gets people to know, like, and trust you. And when you have all three, that's what really builds a brand, opposed to a dead following where people just don't really know, like, or trust you.
It's a great, simple framework for people to think about. It kind of hit all three of those areas. When you talked about your interests and others' interests, do you have any ideas on how to essentially figure out that product market fit, as entrepreneurs would call it? How do you know if there's demand out there for what you're interested in?
Yeah, so there's a few different ways you can go. So one, you can look at, okay, are there other people on social media talking about what I'm talking or want to talk about? Are there people monetizing with this? You can also, you can do market research with ChatGPT, hey, is there a potential market for this? Go deep dive with that. But I find the best way is just looking, okay, are there other creators? Maybe if I want to create on Twitter, I can check on there, or I can even check on YouTube or Instagram, see, okay, are there people kind of doing what I'm doing? And just going that route. But and seeing, okay, are people asking questions around this domain? And can I be someone who helps with that? So you can, I think there's Ask the Public is a website you can use where you type in a keyword, you can see what questions people are asking related to that. You can go on YouTube, type in a keyword. So if I'm thinking about going into productivity, I can type in productivity tips and they'll see all the channels that come up and all the big creators.
Or as another one, probably.
Yeah. 100%.
Got it.
Google Trends, stuff like that. But yeah.
Got it. Okay. So this is, I got two selfish questions, just thinking about me, and my business. One of the areas, I guess, of imposter syndrome that comes up when you're saying, okay, I would like to talk about this particular niche, and is the idea that other people, other creators that are way ahead of you have said basically the same stuff, right? Maybe I'm trying to repackage things, but the crux of what you're thinking and what Dan Coe has said 2 years ago, right, is the same. Mm-hmm. How do you think about that issue?
Yeah, so you can have the two people saying the same thing, but how one person says something is going to resonate differently with the other person. So, Trump, for example, could say, drinking water is good for you. And that's going to resonate with a certain amount of people. Other people are going to absolutely hate him because it's just Trump. It's anything he says is whatever. But, maybe if Obama says drink water, you're going to have the opposite effect, right? So it's not just the message, but the messenger. How you say something and who you are is going to resonate differently with people. And that's why I encourage people also who are starting out, teach the people a few steps behind you, because you get the experts, they've been experts for a while and they forget the nuance and what it feels like at the beginning. But those who are, a few steps behind or in front of you or whatever, if you're teaching people a few steps behind you, you remember what it's like, it's fresh in your mind and how to overcome those problems, whether it's mindset or skill set. And, you just did that. So you're just okay, this is what I did. And this would really help me. And, just understanding different levels resonate with different people. And I think everyone has a unique way of saying stuff, a unique story. My story might resonate with, other younger men who didn't have a father, but maybe women resonate with a different figure, maybe whether it's a man or a woman with a different story. So, just recognizing that and recognizing it's different for everybody and leaning into it.
And my second question on this is, I'm really interested in like your process or I guess repository, how you're keeping track of all the content that you've created for like repurposing or other things. I've thought a lot about like, how does this work? Like, how does a Gary Vaynerchuk, right? Like keep all of his stuff. And then, I mean, he's got minions obviously that are like working on his stuff, but like, how do you do that? Do you have tools or a process for that?
Yeah. So I'm working on processes a bit more, but one thing I do with repurposing is starts with Twitter. So Twitter is my feedback channel where I just pop out ideas like crazy.
Right.
And it's the market's telling me with the engagement, oh, there's something here. If an idea gets more engagement than usual, it's like, okay, I can turn this into a bigger piece of content. So maybe I turn it into a long form thread. Maybe that does well. Okay. Maybe I turn that into a carousel on Instagram. Okay. Maybe I take that long form thread and turn it into a newsletter. I take that newsletter, turn it into a YouTube script. Take that YouTube script, I condense it down into a shorts reel. Just kind of like packaging it up in different ways, but it all starts with validating the idea on Twitter. I mean, or other social media, but it's normally Twitter is my testing ground. And in terms of storing it and tracking it, I will go into my analytics on Twitter every month at the end of the month, and I'll see, okay, what you can sort it by top engaged tweets. And I will take all the top engaged ones. I will throw it into a swipe file. Swipe file is just where you store, content on Notion. And I will, these were my top posts for January 2023. I have it for every month for the past 3 years. So I can go back like, oh, I want to generate some ideas. I can look back, see what's validated and do that. I don't put every single tweet. That would be crazy because I tweet 4 times a day.
Right.
But I do find the top engaged ones for that month and then get in the swipe file. I'm going to start doing that for Instagram as well, seeing what's working. And but yeah, it's basically just taking one small idea, testing it. Is there something there? Okay, let's repurpose it. Like my tweets are the basis for all my short form scripts. My newsletter is now the foundation for my YouTube scripts. And then just, repackaging it, storing it.
All right. That makes a lot of sense. Looking at the top, seeing what works and seeing the market there. What about like advice on like where to start? So I sometimes feel like I've got to be all over the place. LinkedIn, I seem to get more engagement because I'm more talking to people who are like on that platform. Do you have any tips or ideas for like where to start and how to like, should people stay focused or should people try to hit multiple platforms right away?
I recommend sticking to one platform at the beginning because if you're scattering everywhere, you're going to scatter your focus and you're just not going to do any of them well, in my opinion. So what I did, I think about Amazon. They got really good at books and then they went horizontal. So they went vertical, horizontal. You look at a bunch of other businesses and it's like that. So same with Apple, Microsoft, XYZ. So I think the same for social media. I got really good at Twitter, learned the nuance of that, whatever, started growing. Once I got the hang of it, okay, let's, apply this to other platforms. Because at the end of the day, I mean, a lot of you'll notice patterns with the content. I mean, each platform has specific formats and maybe topics that do better, but at the end of the day, it's humans. And I think if you really focus on one platform and kind of understand that, it makes it easier to understand the process for learning other platforms. Like, okay, try this, that, boom. Like, okay, this format, blah, blah, blah. But LinkedIn's great right now. I would highly recommend going hard on LinkedIn. Okay. And what works really well is the carousels. So you have an actionable thread. Like it could be like I write them like Twitter threads. Right. And I just put them into carousels. And then in the description, you put a story giving further context on that actual advice maybe. And so it's like maybe 7 tips on writing. And then in the description, I say, 3 years ago, I was a broke college student, and it changed my life when I started writing whatever. But yeah.
That's awesome. Appreciate that. What's your go-to scheduling software?
Yeah, so for Twitter, it is Hype Fury and Tweet Hunter. I use both, but mainly Tweet Hunter. And then LinkedIn, I just use the native scheduler. And then what's it called? Instagram, I use the native scheduler.
Okay.
But yeah, I've heard good things about Tapio though for LinkedIn.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Let's bring this home. I'm going to wrap this up with some rapid fire questions, and we want to make sure I'm going to give you a couple minutes to just say whatever you want to. If I missed anything, if I was a terrible host and I didn't ask you a question that I should have, we can do that. But let's try to rip through these rapid fire questions. So you're obviously a creator. Who's an up and coming creator that you've really got your eye on that people should be paying attention to?
Taylin Simmonds. I think, I helped him since he was a young wee boy in the Twitterverse. But no, he's killing it. Laura Acosta on LinkedIn, she's great too. She's migrating to Twitter. I think those two are killing it. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we had Taylin on. He was great. And I still keep in touch with him. He's feeling out his niche, and he's getting his voice and really stepping into his voice, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
What are a couple of books that have been most influential on you, and why?
So Influence by Robert Cialdini. I read that when I was probably 18, and that really shifted how I perceive the world. And it's kind of like seeing the Matrix once you see marketing in action and persuasion. It's actually helped me with some scams in Thailand. People tried pulling on me. I was like, oh shit, they're doing this right now. It's been very useful. Awareness by Anthony DeMello is more a spiritual book, but I'd say more philosophy, kind of a mix. But really helped me understand my place in the world and my relationship with myself and others, and how those was like bi-directional, how it both affected. The Way of Superior Man. I read that after my last breakup like 6 years ago, and really helped me understand masculinity on a deeper level. That was great. And then I think the final one is Models by Mark Manson. That book is really amazing. It really helped me understand the power of being vulnerable. Not even just in dating. It's a dating book, but I find in like everyday life, even content creation, just understanding vulnerability is it's powerful, and it's what I think a lot more men need. And I think it really impacts the world for the better. So those are a few.
Have you read Rick Rubin's book that came out recently? It's I think it's called,
it was like the creativity
Creative
one, right?
Act. The Creative Act way of being.
I listened to the audiobook. I listened to like the first 10 minutes. And I just wasn't digging it, so I was like, screw this.
I like it, and I've been recommending it. I like it because like it's really, the chapters are really short, and with kids running around, like I only get sort of chunks of time to read. So I can flip through a few, and it's good. It's very much about creativity and being open, and I do feel like people who don't think of themselves as creative can get a lot out of that book. All right. You're young, man. You got this whole like world at your fingertips, but do you have one piece of advice that you would give to somebody like just starting out in the world? Maybe they're getting out of college, maybe they're, getting out of high school, or got their first job and they're trying to push. What would be your one piece of advice?
I think do uncomfortable shit, like lean into it. I think a lot of us were conditioned to color within the lines and do as you're told, but you look at any successful people in any endeavor, it's a majority of them, they went against the grain and they did the uncomfortable stuff. And I mean, like by definition, you're not going to be in the top 1% of anything if you're doing stuff like everyone else. So just recognizing, if you're doing a new endeavor, people, maybe friends, family, are going to question you early on, especially when you haven't built that track record. And that's okay. I think lean into that discomfort and the doubt, and pursue what you think is best. And give her a go.
Excellent. Final one is, what's got you excited about the next 12 months? we get a lot of negativity in the world and a lot of bickering and all that kind of stuff. But what's got you personally excited?
Really, I feel like this year has been like 10 years of education in business and everything. I feel like I'm really maturing as a person. I'm very immature at times, but I'm excited because I feel like I'm hitting my stride. I feel like I'm just scratching the surface of what's possible. I've built up a lot of confidence in business and content creation, and I'm really excited to see how that compounds in the next 12 months and really just getting everything dialed in. I've spent a lot of money on coaching this year, mentors, and a lot of time and effort, and I'm really excited.
Excellent. Yeah. All right, man. I want to give you the floor. If there's anything that I missed or anything that you want to leave our audience with, I want you to say it. But then I also want you to let us know where we can all learn more about you. I know you're doing a newsletter, and if people want to follow more about you and your story, where can they do that? But also just give you the floor if there's anything that I missed as a terrible host.
No, I think it's great. And I think the big theme here is, if you're wanting more out of life, it first comes from recognizing, okay, what is that? Defining it, actually like sitting down and defining it. And, maybe asking yourself, okay, what do I not want? Or what are the big pain points? And actually feeling it, sitting down and feeling it, maybe visualizing it or whatever, writing about it. And just start leaning in, trying different stuff. And, you're not going to get it right from the get-go. So trying different stuff, doing the divergent, convergent method there. And you never know where it's going to lead. What if it goes right? That's why I always ask myself, I condition myself, what if it goes right? And so, I really love the theme of this podcast. I think it asks really great questions, and it's one of those podcasts that really impacts people's lives. So appreciate you. I wish I had this when I started.
Thank you. I really appreciate those kind words. That's what we're going for is to try to get people to think differently about their choices and about what they can do. And so having your story and stories of people like you, I think really helps. So I appreciate you being here.
Oh yeah. Thank you for having me, brother.
Leave us with where people can find you. Obviously, if you just these days, if you just Google Dakota Robertson, you're going to find him. All right. But give us the details.
Yeah. I guess the main one would be dakotarobertson.net. I couldn't get .com. Some other Canadian social media marketer took it. Bastard. But, what are the odds?
Right.
But, dakotarobertson.net. There you can sign up for my newsletter if you want. And, Twitter is my main, X, whatever you want to call it. That's my main social media. So wrongs to right, WRITE. That's where I put all my unfiltered thoughts. Very politically incorrect sometimes, but those are the main places. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Dakota, so much. I'm going to enjoy continuing to watch your journey, and hopefully our paths will cross again in the future. But thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, brother.